Episode 195. What is regenerative gardening? This is the World Organic News for the week ending 16th of December 2019. John Moore reporting. Regenerative gardening is a process whereby the gardener focuses on the soil health above all else. From this starting point, all else flows. You can either grow veggies or flowers or create a space for pollinators or a playground for children. But the underlying principle is that we focus on the soil. Some of the benefits that arise from this form of gardening are better water quality, much better soil quality, and if enough people in our area are into this, improved air quality. And all of these are wonderful. But the real kicker is that we improve our current climate situation. The key to improving the climate is removing CO2 from the atmosphere. Happily, the key to improving soil involves sequestering carbon in the top 6 inches under our feet. But why would we need to do this? Well, since the Second World War, there's been a flood of artificial chemical fertilisers, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and any other side you can think of. These things, while appearing to fix one problem, often create others. While we might be dealing with aphids by spraying them with a poison, not helping the animals that prey upon the aphids, ladybirds and that sort of thing. So the process of regenerative gardening is aimed at improving the soil by allowing nature to do what it's done for 3.7 billion years. We just sit back and take the little bits out we need, and it's about holding the line. It's about not panicking when we see an issue arising and letting nature take its time to fix things. There will be times when we do lose crops, particularly in the beginning before we set up a balanced ecosystem. And ecosystems can get out of whack at any time, so it's all a matter of observation, care and attention. By turning the soil into a carbon sink, we are actually creating a living soil. The living soil continues to draw carbon down, which is then used to feed other things in the soil, things like mycelia, earthworms and any number of microbes too small for us to observe. A good way to start these sorts of things is to look for quick wins. A quick raised bed garden sown to rocket, or if you like it, radishes, will bring about a return in 4 to 6 weeks without too much trouble. And the quick wins are important, particularly if you're working with children who are yet to understand the speed at which nature works. Even before the interwebs, before PlayStations and all the rest, it took a little bit for children to understand that things take longer to grow than they would expect. Planting a seed does not lead to food the next day. This is an important lesson for children to learn anyway. Good things can take time. Now, there are many things that are associated with gardening that don't make sense, particularly for the non-gardener. The primary one is that it's all too much work, and nothing could be further from the truth. Remember, we have 10,000 years of Western agriculture behind us, flowing from the Fertile Crescent all the way to the boundaries of Europe and out into Africa, banging up against the Indian and Chinese methods, and all of them seem to involve digging in some form or other. In an agricultural sense, the plough is just another form of a large shovel. It's designed to do things slightly differently when it's moving soil, but moving soil it does. If we look at nature, we see that there's very little digging going on. Rabbits, bandicoots, that sort of niche, squirrels as well, but for the majority of time, nature does not dig. One would think if we're going to mimic nature, then we too should not dig. And definitely this is where I come from. Having tried the double dig methods of the older organic styles as advocated by John Seymour and John Jeavons and others, who are advocates for the double dig method. They argue that it frees up the air in the soil and gives it a good tilt. However, if we look back to nature, there is no reason for it. Seeds arise in their own time, in their own season. I came across this understanding of no digging when I was reading The One Straw Revolution by Masanaba Fukuoka. He developed his approach by observations of nature. His task while he was an agricultural scientist was to remove all rogue sproutings of rice seeds out of season. The idea was, if they could break the cycling of the rice, and particularly the rice that was growing outside of paddies in the forests and on the edges of streets and roads, they could break the cycle of rust and other diseases and pests that were bothering the Japanese rice farmers at the time. What Fukuoka discovered was, as summer grass dried off, the winter grasses would grow through them, and at the other change of season, as the winter grasses died off, summer grass grew through these. So no digging, no bed preparation, no perfect tilth. The seeds simply grew when it was their time to grow. He then set up a system within his own rice paddy, which was only 1/4 of an acre, to mimic nature. He sowed the 1/4 of an acre rice paddy with white clover. He then oversowed this with rice seeds. Flooding the paddy for a week killed off the white clover and allowed the rice seeds to sprout. When the rice was getting close to harvest, he would then oversow that with millet or barley. He would then harvest the rice a couple of weeks later, thresh it to collect the seed, then all the straw would be thrown back onto the paddy in a random fashion. Fukuoka himself says that he suffered from the Japanese tray of neatness. When he first tried this system, he placed the straw in neat little rows across the field and it didn't work. Nothing could push through it. He adjusted. Nature doesn't do neatness that often. And by just tossing the rice straw about, the millet or the barley was able to grow through. When the barley was close to being harvested, the same process was repeated, with rice being oversown. By then the white clover had returned because it was that time of the year. The clover continued to put nitrogen into soil. Using this system, Fukuoka was able to grow soil year in, year out, such that his rice paddy field became higher and higher. What a wonderful problem to have. We can take and adapt these systems to our own gardens. We may not wish to grow rice or barley or millet, even though we can certainly oversow things with white clover. We can certainly ensure that we plant new seedlings before the old ones are collected and harvested by doing this thoughtfully and in succession, and we never have to dig. We continually grow our soil and we receive a harvest. Indeed, my favourite quote from Fukuoka goes like this, quote, "What less can I do today?" End quote. His whole philosophy is based upon the idea of doing less and less as a human intervening to try and fix problems, allowing nature to solve those problems that it has already solved through the millennia. So basically this is a regenerative mindset. If we can bring this same attitude and approach to our own veggie gardens, backyards, front yards, hedges and fruit trees, we too can do less and less, allowing nature to give us more and more. Now this seems contrary to everything we've been taught about agriculture and gardening throughout our lives, as I mentioned above. The really hard part about no-dig gardening is getting our head around the idea that nature knows what it's doing and we don't actually have to help, in inverted commas. And this is a mindset shift that just has to take place. It's occurring in parts of agriculture where regenerative methods are at work, but we need to bring it to our backyards, front yards, footpaths, nature strips, and the municipal gardens of the world. To add to the stability of the system, we can plant perennials, shrubs, bushes, small and large trees, depending on the amount of space we have. And there is no reason why these perennials should not also be food producing. At the very least, they should be for the benefit of pollinators, honeybees, native bees, butterflies, birds, and the other species that also do a pollinating job. Without these pollinators, we would really suffer. Something like 80 to 90% of our food requires them to be fruitful. While it might be okay as a batcher to live on things like potatoes and pineapples which don't require pollinators, I suspect that diet would become very dull after a while. There are the things we can do, like setting up worm farms and using the products of the system to improve the soil by not digging it in, but by simply layering it on top between plants that are growing to encourage earthworms into our lawns, if we have lawns. And these two will increase the biology of the soils under them. In summary, regenerative gardening is, as I said at the beginning, simply a matter of putting soil first. By removing all artificial herbicides, fertilizers, pesticides and fungicides, we allow the life that is the soil to do its thing for us. All we have to do is monitor the systems which we set up, make small adjustments here and there slowly, see what happens and collect the harvest when the time comes. So let's let nature do her job. She's been doing it for a lot longer than we have, and already, in inverted commas, knows what the answers are to the problems we're yet to discover. And on that happy note, I'll draw this episode to a conclusion. If you'd like a free copy of the World Organic News No Dig Gardening ebook, jump over to worldorganicnews.com and fill in the forms, and it'll be in your email inbox in no time at all. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.